I was absolutely shocked when I heard about Father Marcelo's murder, but at the same time I wasn't surprised, because these kind of murders are going on now frequently and indiscriminately.
Mexico is one of the most dangerous countries in the world to be an environmental defender because of the rampant extractivism, because of a lot of armed groups and organized crime activities, as well as impunity and corruption.
He was if you like, the priest of the poor, as sometimes it's been called. Faith and activism were woven together in his life, but also in the lives of his supporters.
The cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are intrinsically connected. Spirituality is a great help for them because it brings them together. It tells them that they are part of the bigger story. It tells them that they have rights.
So much of this extractive activity really incurs and steps on indigenous land and forces them to become land and environmental defenders, standing up for themselves.
They're at that front line, and we must do all we can to support them. The most important thing is to get those stories out.
We need to make people realise that actually a life of faith means to put your life on the line. You know, it's a way of expressing their solidarity with Christ. Christ was on the side of the poor and the marginalised. So justice for the earth is equivalent to justice for people. The two are woven together.
We talk about climate change, we talk about biodiversity loss, but most importantly, they disproportionately affect the poorest.
Justice is about loving the neighbour. I think part of the ecological crisis is that we are saying in rich countries, the poor don't really matter to me.
Okay, John Sobrino was a liberation theologian. He was prepared to say that the oppression of the poor and the degradation of those in poverty is an inhuman aspect. Mercy needs to become a principle through which we restructure the order in our society. And if we don't do that, we're effectively becoming inhuman in the way we see the world.
We run programs for wellbeing, spirituality and learning. That could look like a community group coming to learn how to sow seeds and harvest and preserve. We do some mental health programs, so for children or adults with special needs, working and doing activities in the woodland. Then we might have specific courses that relates to seasons, so we might have wreath making in Advent. This year we held our inaugural Laudato Si Awards for schools. It was amazing. One of the secondary schools, they'd produced kind of like an automatic dispenser from a 3D printer where you get a seed ball for people to use. We have a very healthy Laudato Si animator network in the UK, and then within diocese, each diocese has an environmental lead that supports their bishop, and we have regular catch-ups and sharing sessions. So it's brought people together, it's brought communities together. In Greater Manchester, we have a strong interfaith network that works to support environmental activities and action and learning. In April 2023, this group with other civic leads went to Vatican for a private audience with Pope Francis, just to both share what we were doing but also make a commitment to support that transformational change in our communities. Each of us has a skill to bring. For me, in my role, it is looking at strategy, supporting activities, supporting learning, holding to account raising issues, raising opportunities, knocking down barriers within an organisation. For others, it may be going on demonstrations, being activists. I think it's really important to think, right, where is my power? Where can I create most change?
Integral ecology means that everything is connected, to quote Pope Francis. It means that we cannot resolve certain problems without looking at others. So we need to have a bit of a systemic approach to resolving the grave crisis we are in.
Laudato Si, in a way, was an expression of what some of us eco-theologians have been writing about for the last 50 years. Not everyone thinks that climate change is relevant to faith, and that's the first hurdle, if you like, that needs to be overcome.
There is this wonderful combination of faith and science. What we see here is that faith can produce a lot of motivation that then helps individuals, communities, and systems to transform their behavior based on the data that we have. What we are seeing with working with indigenous and tribal communities is that first we need to learn from them. They are doing something right. If you look at biodiversity hotspots, they are usually there where the indigenous are. If you look at the country we are currently in the United Kingdom, here the biodiversity was almost completely destroyed by ourselves. The indigenous communities, through their rituals, which are then embedded in their languages, in their way of proceedings, in their community, is that there is this huge respect towards the common home. We need to think, what do we put on this land, and then how do we love this land? And I think if we do love the land, then our approach to nature will change.
The Laudato Si encyclical was something that was part of my journey towards climate activism. It was actually the document that I took in my backpack when I went up for the first big occupation by Extinction Rebellion. And then finding that other people were carrying it was really powerful. Come to our time of prayer, so I invite you to sit or kneel as you're most comfortable. My arresting officer was a young man, and he pleaded with me. He said, I don't want to arrest you. Please, I don't want to arrest you. My girlfriend is Catholic. I can only say that it was an experience of holy ground. Once I had chosen to remain, I became incredibly calm. I felt absolutely sure that I was doing the right thing. And eventually I was charged with obstruction of the highway and conspiracy to cause a public nuisance. So that led eventually to a court case, but a lot later, almost 2 years later, I had to confess to my parish. I think as soon as one's wearing one of these, one does have a voice. This is the generation we're in, the light of where we are. The light of where we are means that we have to look at the gospel through the lens of climate change. That idea of sacrifice is right at the centre of how we should be considering ourselves. The trouble is it doesn't fit with the norms of our society, and our politicians can't speak that language. We might need to stop flying. I say it here, and it's deeply unpopular. People don't want to give things up. But the sacrifice that those frontline land defenders are making is the ultimate sacrifice.
I wanted to respond to the cry of the earth, but really my motivation came from listening to hearing the cry of the poor, the kind of work with asylum seekers and refugees that I do here. We provide accommodation, food, basic needs, support, and we're all God's children. We're all sisters and brothers in the one family of God, and you're very welcome. God bless the cook. People having to leave their countries to come here, and what's driving them, one of the key factors is climate change. The Gospels are full of Jesus talking about riches and poverty and money and the dangers of wealth and the need to work for justice. It's just everywhere, and the fact that people don't notice it is kind of amazing. The Gospel, you know, our faith should be leading the way in showing what it is to live a righteous life. To do what is right is more important than following laws necessarily. It wasn't not just Jesus who was arrested for doing what was right in his life, but also virtually all the early apostles, Peter, Paul, the early church, saints down the ages, prophets of the Hebrew scriptures. I do remember many years ago a Catholic, Franciscan, saying to me that he thought every Christian should get arrested for something they believe in at least once in their life. A large percentage of Christians could easily be able to get arrested once in their life for something they believe in, for conscience, be willing to pay the price of taking up the cross, you know, for the sake of righteousness, peace, justice, life, all those things. Given my personality and strengths and weaknesses, this is something that I can do. I think I've been arrested about 35 times, but that's over a period of 30 years. That's only once a year. It's not like I'm doing it all the time. It's a valid and important part of Christian vocation, but it's very much underrepresented among Christians. I think the biggest thing really is just we need to stop economic growth, and therefore we need to stop the race trying to get more and more stuff, or even just colluding with the system. This has to become a mainstream idea that we have to escape from this trap.
When I first stepped into it, the sort of sacrifice that people were going, why are you doing this? So most of us had never walked this kind of distance before. We were walking for 2 months and living out of backpacks and sleeping on church floors and relying on each other. We learnt so much by living in community. We learnt you need to acknowledge each other's gifts and weaknesses and step into this together. It was life-changing. Making a better world is definitely possible. It needs to come from the ground up. One of the biggest challenges of facing the climate crisis is that people think that it's going to be really grim. It's not going to be like that, because there are enormous riches to be found in the way that we can build this new world. We feel good about ourselves when we live in a fairer, better world. We feel good when we connect with other people. We feel good when we share. And all of these are the sorts of things that we need to do to address the climate crisis.
One of the images that the Pope has used about this Jubilee is the seed of planting seeds and nurturing them in order that they grow.
He wants to try and bring back a sense of community, that people living together in community is very important, and it's part of what it means to make us human.
We're not separate from the rest of creation and nature, we're part of it. But we are, as humans, we are especially given special gifts and calling by God to take care of the earth as servants.
We also need to be generous. And we have to look around and say, well, it's not just about blaming and shaming, it's also about let us find this energy that will take us in the future.
We talk about joy often in religious terms, about, you know, our relationship with God or going to heaven, and that's where we find it. Actually, I think we find it in each other, and that's because that is God-given.
And we've still got time. We've still got time to support the wonder that we see every single day in our world. And we've still got time to help those people far away that are currently experiencing those impacts which they've not contributed to. And that is the beauty of Pope Francis's teaching and words, that interconnectedness. And that is wonderful how that our faith and other faiths, it can bring us together.
No tenemos miedo, no tenemos miedo, no tenemos miedo, nunca más. Quiero que mi país sea feliz, con amor y libertad. Las mujeres, 1, 2, 3.